Today I am covering Joe D'Amato's entry into the Zombies franchise, except it isn't. It has nothing to do with that series, so sit down because there's gonna be a quick history lesson with your boy Spooky Celluloid about how this ended up in the Zombies franchise. Back in 2002, the distribution label Shriek Show had the rights to a random horror film from Joe D'Amato named Killing Birds. And since this was the infancy of the internet and we didn't have the boutique label boom that we've had in the last few years, Shriek Show really didn't know how to market this film, because most people didn't know who Joe D'Amato was, because this was when his films would get released in the States but under different titles with a different director's name. So they decided to do the only logical thing, which was to take a film that was released before Zombie 4, slap the Zombie 5 title on it, and then hope it sells. And it did actually sell, but it also created a lot of confusion in an already confusing series. May I remind you that the entire Zombies franchise started off with an unofficial sequel to Dawn of the Dead, and then you had Zombie 3 and Zombie 4, which I covered on my channel before, that have little to do with anything. And now you have Zombie 5, which has even less to do with anything, because there's not really zombies until like the last 30 minutes, and even the regular title, Killing Birds, is kind of random, but that's for later on in the video. So if Zombies 5 Killing Birds is not about zombies or killing birds, what is it about? It's about Vietnam. No, not really, but the film does start with one of her characters, who is a Vietnam vet who's hitchhiking, getting back into his hometown, and his name is John Rambo. Goddamn, I wish they had gone that far. And he's going back home after the war to go see his wife. But before he goes to see his wife, he stops by to say hi to his many, like 20-30 birds, which I always thought birds were not a good pet because they're loud, they're annoying. Imagine having 30 of them chirping away all at once. So what he does is he enters his room and sees that his wife is cheating on him with another man. So he does the only logical thing and slits the guy's throat. Then we cut to this couple with a baby. We don't know who they are. We won't know who they are because they get killed the next scene. And our Vietnam vet still has one person to murder, his wife. He finds her, slits his throat, and then takes the baby, but not before he gets his eyes gouged out by one of his birds, which is the extent of damage that will be caused by a bird in this movie called Killing Birds. He then goes to the hospital and is declared blind because, well, the birds gouged out his eye. We then cut to the future where we see Steve, our main character, and Steve is just as interesting as any other man named Steve. He is studying birdology, I guess, at the university, and he gets a letter, and that letter tells him that his research was accepted, which means that he'll go on a road trip with a few of his friends to go look at birds. I think I don't really understand. I'm not into the academic research of birds, so a lot of the dialogue there was confusing to me. And we meet the team, which is comprised of Steve, Paul, some other guy, and that other guy really likes computer, and he's been programming a sex simulator game, but from the late 80s, so it's like this vector graphic stick figure just doing this, while the stick figure that is the female is doing this. And I just realized it's like the third time I've simulated fucking on this channel, and I really don't know where my life's been going. And all of these scenes are weirdly edited with a montage with the most shitty soap opera 80s sounding song, which is really off-putting. This has to be one of the worst soundtrack in an Italian horror film. Usually the Italians are pretty good at music, not in this one. And then we meet Anne, who's a reporter for a paper. I think it's the school newspaper. It doesn't really sound that important, but oh boy will our other characters not like her because of that. And she gets an assignment to follow the team who are looking at birds. I also think she has something for birds, because every character in this goddamn movie has something for the birds. Anyway, she gets sent into this assignment and she goes to present herself to the team, and already everybody is defensive and they don't like her because they think she's gonna do this hit piece on them. Guys, you're not secret CIA operative going to a third world country to overthrow the government. You're looking at birds in a Louisiana swamp. It's not that serious. Anne also has something else that is really off-putting in this film. I think this was actually an Italian film that was shot with live sound. Why do I say that? First of all, the audio quality is god-awful, and second of all, Anne always changes accent. She's just confused. It might be the birds, I don't know. After we meet the entire crew of expendable of our main characters, we also meet Paul, Daniel, their names are so generic. We meet Brian, I think, and he's the camper driver. They say camper, but it's clearly a van. So I guess the script had camper, but the movie had van budget. And he tells them that he has to drive the van, so he gets into the group of eventual victims and they drive to the Vietnam vet's house, which Anne, the journalist, found him because of something to do with the bird they're looking for. He's like a bird expert, as you could have guessed by him having 30 birds, and he's blind. Which I don't know why I had to mention that right now. You already knew. So yeah, they get to this house, and Steve and Anne just decide to break into his house, which in Louisiana wouldn't be something I'd do because I'd be too afraid to be fucking shot. But the blind man doesn't have a gun, luckily. And he just tells them that, hey, what are you doing in my house? And they're like, oh, we're looking for things about birds. And he's like, okay, I'll make you listen to bird audio. And then they listen to bird audio, he gives them a file, and then they go on their merry way, tell the group that he looked creepy, which I don't know what that meant. He's just a guy that likes bird and doesn't have eyes. Nobody knows he's a murderer at this point. They just know that he likes birds and he's blind. So I kind of find it offensive for bird-loving blind people. And then when they go on their merry way, they find a dead body. And they do nothing. They're traumatized for like 5 seconds. The girls are like, oh my god, we need to do something. And the boys are like, yeah, we need to, but we also need to go on to our expedition just in case we see that rare bird. So they go on to their expedition and they get it to a house. And that house is the house where the Vietnam vet originally murdered his entire fucking family, except for the kid. Don't forget about the kid. There they see empty bird cages. It's been abandoned, you know, it doesn't look too great. There's a bed, so some of the characters are like looking at each other and they're like, oh, we totally gonna fuck on this abandoned building's bed. It's probably moist, probably has bugs in it, but oh boy, does it turn me on. In the basement, there's a generator, which is not an information I'd usually give out, but it's gonna be important because one of our characters really likes his long chains, and this is kind of foreshadowing on how he'll die. They get a weird vibe of the house. Steve has this weird hallucination where he sees blood on the bed and then he runs to a room and Anne, the journalist, is crucified, which might be symbolism about the work of a journalist. Probably not, this movie is not that deep. He runs back into the room with everyone in it, so he confirms that it was just a dream or an hallucination because everyone's alive. Did I mention that he has a girlfriend who has glasses? Most of the woman character in this, other than Anne, don't really have any important role other than being present. She has glasses and she's kind of weirded out by Anne being there. She's kind of jealous. She's not important because she's the first one who's gonna die during the night that they're staying into the house. And they're staying into the house for some ungodly reason. I didn't hear because, again, audio is shit. The other female character that isn't the journalist sees Steve's girlfriend through the window and she gets killed by 3 zombies. So that is the first appearance of zombie-like characters in this film called Zombie 5. And you never really get an explanation as to why the zombies are here. There is a shot of the Vietnam vet reading a book, but it's not really mentioned or explained, so I assume that this is kind of Joe D'Amato doing his version of The Beyond. Because when you think about it, it has killing animals that kill for no reason other than supernatural ones, you have zombies popping out of nowhere, and it's in Louisiana. Joe D'Amato doing Fulci. So yeah, these zombies brutalize her and we get to see some pretty decent gore, and then all goes to shit. She goes to see the other characters to tell them what she just witnessed, and they don't believe her, so they go look for Steve's girlfriend everywhere in the house. They split up, because that's always a good idea, and then the driver is set on fire. And then our boy with the chain gets his chain stuck in the generator, and he is brutally fucking killed. Before we get to the generator kill, sorry, that kill is just my favorite in the film, so I got really excited. They see Steve's girlfriend's body and they freak out. They get into the van, but they don't have the keys, of course, because the keys are with the driver. And then the 3 zombies just pop up and kill the other female character by dragging her through the window and ripping off her throat. The gores and the kills are pretty good in this. You wouldn't expect it by the first 45 minutes where nothing happens and everything is just terrible. And then that's where we get the characters that freak out. The van doesn't start, so they go inside to barricade themselves, and then our guy with the chain dies, and then the other guy dies. He gets also brutalized. He gets like the end of a zombie goes through the roof, rips out his throat. In between that, there's a zombie that pops out of the wall, and the wall is like super brightly lit, which is also a reason why I think this was probably influenced by The Beyond, because the zombie comes out of nowhere, and then whenever he gets killed, the hole just becomes a door through the outdoors. My point is, every character dies other than Steve and Anne. And then they finally escape the house and meet the Vietnam vet, who we learn is actually Steve's father, in the most non-shocking turn of event ever. And Steve's father, the vet, is like, blah 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 something, I need to sacrifice myself, it's me thereafter. And then the birds finally kill somebody. Off screen. Credit rolls. So, what did I think of Zombie 5 Killing Birds? Well, first of all, this is a fairly entertaining So Bad It's Good movie. Now, I don't usually cover these types of films, but I've covered Zombie 3 and Zombie 4, who are amongst my favorite of bad movies that are fun to watch. Now, a lot of people really adore Zombie 5 and they put it on this high regard as being one of the best So Bad It's Good movie, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I adore this film, I love to watch it, but I wouldn't put it so high on these So Bad It's Good films. I think there are way more entertaining films out there, especially from Italy, especially from that era, but it does have its moments and it does have its fans. Personally, for me, it just takes too long to get into the fun bits, and you just get some funny things spurred in between, like Anne's accent being terrible, Steve just being the most Steve guy ever, and eventually you do get the title, but just at the end. I don't know, this is a weird one that I really need to rethink about and rewatch with a group of friends while I'm probably intoxicated. Overall, I'd highly recommend it. In my opinion, it's more entertaining than Burial Grounds, but that's just me. It's about on the same level, and Joe D'Amato co-directed this with another director. I don't really know the name, I don't really care. It's just funny because the Shriek Show release says 2 Masters of Horror, when if this was released in 2002, I don't think a lot of people knew Joe D'Amato, and even though he's made some great horror films, I mainly know him for the sex guy. So it's just weird that they're like, Master of Horror, Joe D'Amato, man who made like 4 horror movies. Anyways, if you can find it, which is easier to find now because Vinegar Syndrome put out this amazing edition, I still like my Shriek Show DVD. This was the OG. This is a piece of history. This is how this random ass film from 1987 by Joe D'Amato ended up being in one of the most notoriously confusing franchise, Zombie. So I love my copy, and you should get it if you can find it. Have a good one.